So I'm going to give my insights and my tips on how you can fall to sleep a lot faster, especially for a lot of entrepreneurs or business guys that are struggling and their mind is going over and over again and they're thinking it can be a big, big problem. The thing about falling asleep that I think people try and tackle the problem once they get into bed. So they think about the problem only exists once they enter the bed and once they lay down. They don't look at what happened before that. That's one of the major things that I've seen. So I'm going to talk about my insights and what I think about it and how I've improved my sleep, because it's been a huge thing for me as a professional athlete. It was super important, and especially with travel, because I travel all over the place. So getting jet lag and how to battle that, I had to understand it and I had to get a good understanding of this to improve my quality of life, basically. And it's one of the major problems that a lot of people have. So I'm going to talk about my insights afterwards, but I'll go through the basics first. So obviously, the basic stuff is staying away from your phone and TVs and blue light, and you can get those glasses if you want and all that sort of stuff. There's options on your phone. You can try and set up yellow light, I believe it's called, or different options on your phone to avoid the blue light, and that's fine as well. Not doing anything overly active with your brain too close to sleeping time. It's pretty obvious as well. So don't try and do like a solve a difficult problem just before you go to sleep, because that's going to get your brain up and going. You know, dark rooms, all the obvious stuff that you should hopefully know about or looked into. One of the things I would definitely avoid doing is taking melatonin. That's very a chemical solution that you get offered very quickly or very obviously. Take melatonin, especially when you travel. Take melatonin, but that's like it's just a band-aid. It's not helping the root cause to most of the problems. And obviously avoiding caffeine close to bedtime as well. That gets spoken about quite a lot. So these are like the very, very obvious things for me. What I try and do, or what I have done to improve my sleep, like I said, it was a big problem for me as an athlete, is I've set up a system that I use before I go to sleep. So I have like timings when I want to be in bed, what I'm going to do before I go to sleep, and all that sort of stuff. And then I have quite a clean pathway for when I get into bed. And what I do is I have a notebook by my bed, and before I get into bed, I list out all of the things that I achieved that day that gives me a feel of gratification and you know, achievement, and I feel good about myself. And I write down the list of the things that I have to do the next day. For me, this is vital, because if I don't do this, which sometimes happens, like life goes on, I travel a lot, and I don't write down my list, I get into bed and it's all I think about. What have I got to do tomorrow? I've got this at this time. And the reason I do that, I've worked out, is that I'm worried that I'm going to forget something. So I'm worried that something's going to escape my mind. So I'm always going through a checklist in my brain. Like, I've got to remember I do this, and I've got to remember to do that, and I've got a meeting at 12 o'clock. And then I think about that meeting, and then it goes off on this weird tangent. What I found is when I write down these things that I have, the busy day, the next day that I have, when I write down the things that I need to achieve, they kind of leave my brain, because I have, you know, I feel good that I'm going to do those things tomorrow. I'm going to be reminded about those things. I know for a fact they are going to happen, so I can kind of forget about them, and that helps me drift off to sleep. So that for me has been a huge trick, if you want to call it a trick, or insight that has helped me have a routine before I go to sleep to calm down, and then also have this list that I make. I try and make this 30 minutes before I get into bed, so I know, because sometimes you think of something else that you've forgotten as well, and then you write it down. But before I brush my teeth, before I do anything that I've got to do before bedtime, I try and do this. Then again, if we take it further back, the biggest issue with sleep for most people is caffeine intake. In this day and age, a lot of people drink a lot of coffee, and I read a study about this and about what caffeine actually does to the brain, and people don't understand what caffeine is. People think that caffeine gives you energy, but so you cannot give the body energy. It's not. The only reason it can do it is by converting molecules into energy, like sugar and that sort of stuff can give you energy. Same with any sort of caffeine, it doesn't give you energy. What it does is it shuts off the part of your brain that senses sleep, that makes you want to go to sleep. The molecules, I can't remember the name from the top of my head. Probably should have looked them up before this video. But the molecule that your brain, the receptor for that molecule in your brain, that gets shut off by caffeine. So when you shut off that molecule, you get what you call sleep pressure. So that molecule builds up. And then when the caffeine wears off, you feel tired. That's why you get like sometimes after lunch you get that tiresomeness because you're putting your body through work by eating and doing, and you had your morning coffee. By the time your morning coffee wears off, you're like, oh, a bit sluggish. That's because the in your brain, it's receiving that molecule that you've built up pressure on. So you need to learn to control that molecule in your brain. And the biggest issue and the biggest mistake that people make is when they initially wake up in the morning, they drink coffee. And this starts a horrible cycle throughout the day that then creates a problem at night. Because what your body is built with something called a circadian rhythm. So if you don't understand what the circadian rhythm is, you can look it up. But it's basically to do with the sun and the moon and how it, the sun rises and light enters your eyes, and that's how you turn your body on and you start your day. So before we had electricity, before we had heating, before we had all these things, the body was built on a circadian rhythm. So as the sun rises, you wake up, and as the sun sets, you go to sleep. Now, obviously, people are living these crazy lives, and all the blue light that we're taking in is affecting our circadian rhythm. So that's what blue light does, is it affects the rhythm of your sleep. So caffeine is the worst for that, and it really affects it. And what caffeine does, as I explained, it shuts down the center in your brain that detects the sleep molecule. So when that is shut off, your brain almost feels like it's asleep. Even though you feel awake, you have actually put your brain to sleep in certain ways because it cannot feel that molecule. And the only time that is shut off is when you're asleep. So the only time that your brain won't be detecting that molecule and it'll be, clearing it, is when you're asleep. So if you wake up and you drink caffeine, you then shut off that neurocenter in your brain, and it stops detecting that molecule, and your brain thinks it's asleep. So what you're doing by waking up and drinking caffeine first thing in the morning is you are still asleep in your brain. Not only does it dehydrate you because you've had no other liquid in your system, and caffeine naturally dehydrates your system, and you're dehydrated because you've sweat through your sleep, so you're actually really badly dehydrating your body. You're also closing that nerve center in your brain. You're shutting it off. So let's say you sleep 6 hours because you didn't have great sleep the night before, so you only actually get 6 hours, and you can look at your deep sleep and you can do all that sort of stuff. Let's say you do that, then you wake up, and as soon as you do is you drink coffee, then for the next 4 hours, your brain is going to think it's asleep. So that means your circadian rhythm is shut off, and it believes it's asleep, and it'll only activate once the caffeine leaves your system. And to metabolize the caffeine can take 3, 4, 5 hours, depending on how much you take and all that sort of stuff. So let's say you wake up at 8 a.m. and you only had 6 hours sleep, but you have a coffee straight away, so your body still thinks it's asleep. That means it's now 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and your body just starts to wake up. So your circadian rhythm, which is normally like a 12-hour day, is now started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That's why when you try to go to bed, again, if you're waking up at 8, okay, let's say you try and go to bed at 11 or 12, but it's like because you want that 8 hours sleep, your circadian rhythm is only going to start kicking in at 1 a.m. because you've offset it by 3, 4, 5 hours with the caffeine intake in the morning. So like a lot of these things that we're learning now, it's not so much about what you do, but it's about when you do it. Same with supplementation, same with food intake, same with protein. So the body works in a certain way. So you need to be super aware, not how much coffee you have, that's not the problem, how much of it you drink, it's when you drink it. So what changed in my life and my sleep and improved the quality of my deep sleep, and I've done a lot of testing for this as well. I got one of those Aura rings, and I slept and looked at my sleep quality. I've done loads of breathing and all sorts of stuff because I got a broken nose and all these different things. I really deeply looked at my sleep, and the thing that improved it the most for me was cutting off caffeine for the first 2 to 3 hours of my day. So I try and not operate with caffeine in the morning, and then for me, I wake up at like 8 a.m. So when it hits 11, 12 o'clock, then I'll have my first cup of coffee. I'll have my first caffeine intake, and I'll have a lot of coffee because I live in a place that loves coffee. I'm on the beach drinking coffee. I enjoy it, and I try and shut that off by 4 o'clock. So I'll have a 5-hour window where I ingest caffeine, and it helps me throughout the day and keeps me switched on. And I highly approve of drinking coffee, but I will shut it off after 4 p.m. so it's not affecting my sleep, and I won't start it for the first 2-3 hours of the day. And I haven't heard many people talking about this, and I think it's a super, super vital thing for young people who are like banging down coffee every morning. They think they're like, oh, don't talk to me till I've had my morning coffee. It's like the worst addictive, crazy thing you can have. Because if you're an addict to caffeine in the morning, you're affecting your sleep at night without realizing it, because you don't associate lack of sleep to caffeine that you had in the morning. But you've got to look at your cycle of your body, your circadian rhythm and the cycle that you go through. Once you understand that and you study it and you think about it, you really see the difference and what you're doing to your system. So the first thing you do when you wake up is you should try and drink like a liter of water, and you need to replenish your system and hydrate your system. Once you've done that, you can then look at food intake, all those different sort of things. When you're gonna, depends on your workout schedule, your work schedule, all those sort of things. So my bit of advice from this video when it comes to how you're struggling to go to sleep and how you struggle to fall asleep is you need to look at your caffeine intake, not how much you are getting, but when you are getting it. And do not drink caffeine in the morning as soon as you wake up. There's nothing worse you can do for your circadian rhythm. There's nothing worse you can do for your hydration and everything else that you have in your system. And yeah, you may feel like a little bit of a perk up, but remember, you are not giving your body energy. You are depriving your body of the knowledge that it has that sleep molecule going into your brain. That's all you're doing. So you feel more alert and more awake, but you're not gaining energy from it. The only way you gain energy is by breaking down food and that going into your bloodstream, and sugars and carbohydrates and fats, and we can talk about that all in a different video. But how to improve your sleep is to watch your caffeine intake and to empty your mind before you go to sleep, or before you begin your bed system, or whatever you want to call it, by going to sleep. So hopefully that helps everyone, and I hope you get better quality of sleep because of it. There's a few more tips and a few more things I can help with. So subscribe to the channel, and I'm going to read out loads of advice, and you can just pick little things up bit by bit.